And what I've done here is I've taken the similar flames that I've done on the other side and done somewhat of a duplication, but not exactly, because obviously flames don't have an equal side. And I've basically worked up to the same areas on both sides as far as the height. And now what I'll start doing at this point here is I'll start working my own flame tails and my own flame style off from the ends of these and up to here. And at that point I'll stop, get ready to do the skull. Once I do the skull, then I'll turn around and add the darkness to the skull, work the flames over the top, add a little orange to it, and then the job will pretty much be completed once I do that. I would like to do more detailing down in the bottom area of these flames, but if I do, I'll take away from the original Fender one that basically had the hardcore stencil areas. And so the happy way between both of them is, like I said, doing both their style and my style. What I'm doing now is I'm going to go around this bottom edge here of the fairing, and then I'm going to take along this bottom edge and kind of fill in a little bit of yellow in the bottom edge here. Then I'm going to start working up on the top edge with my freeform flames. I'm going to get a couple licks underneath here, which I've missed right now. And so we get this whole thing completed where the whole front edge of this is all done with the style of flames like they were using. And then we'll jump up to the upper edge and do the real fire up there. What I'm doing now is I'm transitioning right about here on up with my style of flames as a core instead of the stencil. Now you'll notice mine will be a little bit softer, and I can create the same kind of loops like they did without using the stencil by just doing it freehand. And when I do it freehand, they have a softer edge on it, so it doesn't have such a hardcore stencil look to it. And so I'm going to basically be doing them right now. And what I'm doing is I'm still coming on this angle off the fairing to where I come basically off the edge of it. And you'll notice every once in a while I'll put a little flame lick area that will basically look like an independent little flame, like right here. And what this will look like is just a piece of, like a flame lick escaping, getting off on its own. Just kind of like a piece that failed off there. Okay, you see basically the softer as they come up. I'm not trying to get too much of this red area up here because we don't want to cover the entire fairing with the flames. We want them to come up on the front edge. As you can see, the way the fairing looks now, we've basically come around the entire area in the front, and we've almost equaled them out on each side to where the fairing looks equal. The only area that's not equal is in the front, in the middle of the fairing right here, when that's where we're going to put our skull, and then we'll equal out those flames, but we pretty much equal on both sides. What I've done is I've gone back and forth between this side and this side and tried to equal out somewhat of a level of the flames. Then I've gone in here and created the first edge of where the skull will be. The skull will sit right in here, and I'm going to cut out a stencil for that just to give me my location. I'm going to use a similar style to what they had in their picture, but I'm with the open mouth and everything, but I'm going to create a little bit more of a depth by using black in the skull, and then I'll add some shading. I think it'll add a little more dimension to the skull and won't take away from the fairing. Since the bike does have black, yellow, and red, black being the handle grips, the frame, we're not going to take away too much of anything on the bike by adding black to this picture. Alright, what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take a regular piece of paper and I'm going to cut kind of a location stencil for the skull. I want to use a similar style that they had in the picture, which had the open mouth with the teeth, and I'll do that on this. A good way to do like the skull is to generally draw the shape of the skull, which is usually like kind of an oval shape. In other words, what I'll do is I'll fold this paper in half, right on the oval, and I will create the eyes of the skull. Now you can see what I've done is I've created kind of half of a skull on here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just basically cut first basically the outline out. This will form basically the skull shape on here. And then I will take this part of the stencil so that I can locate the eyes, and I'll still keep it in the half pattern. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut around here. And create basically everything kind of equal. Now I'll go back in and actually offset some stuff. What we're going to do here is create the teeth, or at least a tooth pattern. Well, got a little skull going on there. And if you want to, at trick or treat time, you could keep the skull around and you could wear it around the neighborhood, but neighbors would probably think you're a little whacked. Alright, what we're going to do is get busy. We're going to do the outline first in the yellow. Then I'm going to go in with the black, do the nose, eyes, and the mouth area. Then I'll freehand the rest of it. All this is for a location stencil, just to get the skull located just in the exact area. I'll first tape this on to get it centered. I'll put this back over the top, take this out, and then do my outline first. Alright, what I've done now is I've taped basically the paper stencil over the top here of the skull shape. Now there's a little bit of an edge over here that'll cause a hard line of overspray, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some paper, mask around the outside of it just so until I get the yellow in the skull. It's going to be a quick, simple mask, just basically take some paper and mask the area off. And we're doing that just so that we don't get the overspray onto the surface. Do that like that. This stencil becomes junk to me after I do this because I don't really like using stencils on a lot of like free-handing stuff. It gives it a softer edge. So I'm using this as a location stencil, like I said, to locate the skull in the center. And now is I'm actually airbrushing the yellow around the outside of the skull, giving it basically some form. I don't need to actually use it other than just that purpose, just to give it basically an outside edge. And then I'll go in and I'll soften it up, but I want to give it at least the dimensions that I need in there. Okay. Now technically I can just take that stencil, leave that in if I need to, and I can take the existing stencil that I have, the inner stencil, and what we're going to do with that is we're going to lay it on the inside part here, and we're going to spray through that the dark color. A little bit of black in here. Give this basically okay. Now we've done basically both. As you can see, I've got the stencil in there with the darkness. Now on their original piece that they did, they had basically a stencil with the open mouth. I got it with an open mouth, a little different style than they did, but I'll go back in and airbrush my own highlights on the skull, give it a little bit. They skipped on a couple of areas. They were trying to incorporate the flame and basically make the skull look like it's in. On this piece, I'm trying to make the skull look defined as opposed to buried in the flame. So a little difference in the way I'm going to do it.